Hello. In this tutorial, we're going to look at while and when we use while, and we might have a look at a few other things as well. Now, if we look at this program, it might seem a little bit complicated if you're still very new to programming, but don't worry, I'll explain it all to you. Import random is just going to import the random class so that we can create a list of random numbers. In main, this is the first part of the program and the program that will run first. It will call these functions here, these functions or methods. The method, when it's called, will print out a list, or example one will print out a list. It will make a variable and set that to 0, and here we have a while loop. While counter is less than 10, counter will add 1 to counter. We have a list which is appended with a random number. So it's going to append a list with a random number for 10 places in the list, and then it's going to print it out. Okay, so let's just look at this first. It's going to print all of them out. So this is example 1, and you can see that it's printed out 10 random numbers. Example 2 has done exactly the same thing, 10 random numbers. Example 3 has printed out more random numbers. There's 10. So let's have a look at the individual bits of code. I've been over example 1, so let's go over example 2. It does the same thing. It creates a list, but this time it's using a for loop. And it's saying for counter in range of 10, append a list with a random number. Now this is very neat and tidy, and this is the way that you would do it. You wouldn't use a while loop necessarily here. So you might ask yourself, well, why do we use a while loop anyway? And we're getting to that. In this example, we have a list while true. Now, I want you to take notice of this while true and how it's different from this condition up here. So up here we've got while counter is less than 10. Here we've just got while true. It appends a list with a random number, but we have a condition in here. If the length of a list is greater than 9, and it has to be 9 because it starts counting at 0, so 0 to 9 is going to be 10 places. Print out what you've got, which will be the 10 numbers, and then return false. Now this is a key point here. While true, this runs, but as soon as it gets larger than 10, or it gets to 10, it's going to return false, and that's what stops it. Otherwise, this would just keep on appending more and more random numbers to it. So, again, that's a bit of a long-winded way of doing example 2, which is nice and neat and tidy. So why do we use a while loop? Well, what if you don't know how many things are going to be in a list, or how many times this piece of code is going to be run? If you've got a for loop, you can set the condition. You know how many times it's going to go through the loop. But if you don't know, you use a while loop. So it's while true. So for example, if we had a list, let's say a party list, and there's going to be some people that I want to invite to the party. So here I've got a while loop, and here it's going to create a list, and it's going to ask me to enter my name, and if I enter done, it's going to return false to stop the while. And here it's this doesn't really need to be in here. It's just if I enter in a space, it's going to ignore it. And then it's going to append reply, which is my input, to the list, and it's going to print the list. So let's have a look at this. If I run this, now I'm going to have to call this because I've done this differently to the other module. So if I call add, it now asks me to enter a name. Well, I want to go to my own party, so I'm going to add me. I'm going to invite my goldfish Fred, and I'm going to invite my friend Jane, and I'm going to invite Tiger, who is a cat. Right, now there is a list, and if I do done, it now stops. The list stops, and you can see here that it's returned false. So can you see how the while loop is working there? We don't know how many people are going to be in the list. I could have put more people in the list. I could have kept going until until done was in. So while true, it's going to run this code until it's false. Of course, I could just put break in here, which would stop it. But I've put return false. So now we can look at some of the other bits here. Let's say I want to remove this. Because what we have here is a list is basically a data structure, and it has its own things that you can use to interact with it. But I've created some new ones that we're going to use. So add, we've seen, remove. So now if I call remove, it asks me who I want to remove. Well, I really like Fred, and being as Fred is a fish, I'm going to remove Tiger because he will just try to make lunch out of Fred. So now, how do I know that operation has actually occurred? So if I do show list, it now shows the list, and you can see that Tiger has been removed from this list. Okay, so we don't want to get too far away from the list here. This while loop, while true, while something is true, run the code. If you're using, if you know how many times you want the loop to execute, you use a for loop. Let's have a look at the while loop a little bit more. So create a list. And we create a variable user input, and we set that to an empty string. We have the while loop. The while loop is going to have some condition that needs to be met. So let's do what we've been doing. While user input does not equal done, then don't forget the semicolon, then run this piece of code. Now this is just one Boolean statement or one Boolean condition in the while guard. We could put more, and that's what I'm going to do in a minute. So first of all, let's just write this. User input equals input, enter a name, and then after that it's going to have to do something with this, so we're going to append it to a list. User input. Now that's all we're going to have. So I pop a name in and another one, and then done, and it starts. So if we want to set some more conditions to this, so there's a limit to how many people we can put in the list. We can add in and the length of a list is less than 3. Let's do less than 4. So here, this is a new keyword here, and now the reason why we would put and in is because user input does not equal done, or it is less than 4. But if I put or in there, that won't work, and here's why. Because this condition will be met, but this condition will not. And in an or statement, only one of the conditions needs to be met, or both of them. So we need this to be an and. So this condition needs to be met, and this condition needs to be met. So it's not done. That would be true. And if the list is not greater than 4, then that would be true. So both would be true, so it would run this code. If that was an or, and I didn't put done in, this condition would be true, and it would just forget about this one. So let's run this. Right, so it got to its maximum length, and then it didn't ask any more questions because this was no longer true. This whole statement was no longer true. I'll go over Boolean statements with you in the next video. But right now, what I want you to take away is this while loop depends on some condition being true. So while we don't know the condition is being true, while we don't know the length or how many times we want this code to run, we're going to use a while statement, a while loop. If we want to set some conditions in there, then we can have one condition or two conditions or even more. We can use and, or we can use or. But here we have to use and because both these conditions need to be true before this will be run.
If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and try out one of my other videos.